is Alexander. Shabbat for three. Bingo!
Carter will get it for the win. Got it! He is hard to believe.
Here's Jordan.
Yes! The Magic, a 360 turn with the dribble. Magic down the middle. Gives underneath the Worthy. Slam dunk.
Third in the corner. Double fake.
Now it's recording live and direct. Fabian PerspecTV. You know, we started from Santo Domingo, but we're taking a stop, tearing off from Miami to Los Angeles with my man Dime Dropper on this collab over here. First time on the show, but we're gonna be on the Dime Dropper's YouTube channel and the Put in Perspective, Fabian PerspecTV YouTube channel as well. Dime Dropper. We've been talking on Twitter for a long time. This guy is the young savant. Tell him how you started. Tell everybody how you doing. How'd you get started? How'd you blow up on Twitter or on YouTube, really? How did everything get started?
Well, I'm hyped to be here. You know, I'm excited to finally be collabing on something coast to coast like Barkley in his prime, New York to Los Angeles. So I love that. No, I just started after I graduated from college in 2020. Wanted to start doing what I always wanted to do, talk about the game that I love. And so I'm a Clipper fan, but I also watched Laker games my whole life. So I try to go live and talk about every Laker and Clipper game after it happens and go to as many Clipper games as I can. And then I post videos to share the experience with my subscribers. And in the playoffs last year, I went to every single home game. So every single one's on my channels. And if anyone's curious. But yeah, I just started out talking Clippers, talking basketball. And then I started finding an interest in the history of the game when we were in quarantine and they were showing all these old games. And after The Last Dance, and I was like, man, everyone talks about this GOAT stuff every day. But I've been commenting on this stuff for so many years without actually watching these GOATs play. It's one thing to hear it, but it's nothing to see it. So I looked and realized how much stuff there is on YouTube. And it's not the same when you just watch a random classic game. But it's different when you really watch a series or, you know, watch a whole series. You know, you learn the tendencies. You know what's coming. You know how the team did before the next game. It's different than just watching a random classic game where you don't know, like, how's Scottie Pippen doing this season? Like, you know, oh, did Paxson make his threes this year? Like, you don't know that stuff when you just put on game 3 of the finals. But when you start and watch the whole series, you get the bigger picture. So I started thinking, let me do a time machine or timeline starting from the first GOAT candidate, Bill Russell, and go all the way back to when I started watching basketball. So that's what I'm doing right now, chronicling it on my channel and on my Twitter. And the way I blew up, so to speak, not really, but was the rant after we blew a 3-1 lead, and everybody gravitated towards that. I had 100,000 views on it, and I got 2,000 subscribers because of it. That was my base. So I've been building off that for the last year. But my new passion that I've been really pushing on Twitter, and then now my YouTube channel as well, is this timeline each year. Right now, 1971. So speaking of the Knicks, they are the defending champions where I'm at right now.
Wow. That's where we the way me and Dom linked up was on Twitter. And it was because I was talking about the Knicks.
It was the Spaces. You just came in. I'd never seen your account before. You only had like 230 followers then, and now you have like 600 more.
But that's because we're just yapping all day on Twitter Spaces, which is crazy, which is Twitter's version of Clubhouse. And I started following you because of that. I think JP, shout out to JP, who's from the West Coast. He's a Clippers fan.
That's how you started following me? Because JP?
I think so. Because JP would post your stuff, and he's like,
yeah, he retweeted me sometimes saying,
he's like, he got the best like Clipper content, and he got the best old school. I think it was him.
It was more. I don't think he's ever shouted me out about the Clippers. He mostly talked about like he really puts in his time.
Yeah,
he got in a space with me actually, and I think before you came, and we were talking, and that's when we got to like know each other pretty well.
And from there, I started talking about the Knicks, and I would talk about how Patrick Ewing is like the best, maybe not the best Knick ever, but he meant more to his team than Walt Clyde would mean to the 70s Knicks, which is up in the air for me. But because I was so passionate about it, you just kept asking me questions like, wait a minute. I don't see myself as a professional or such a big Knicks fan or a big, like, I just try to be humble about my arguments, because I know some people you get into an argument with and they just know basketball. I just ask questions about it and I'll become curious. But with you, like, it made me feel welcomed because I wasn't gonna do Twitter Spaces, but after being in that room with you, it was like it felt good. And then from there, it was just anytime I jumped into your space, and we was talking about the Knicks, and I'm always talking about the Knicks. You're like, yo, let's talk about the Melo Knicks. And I was like, why? That was a torturing time period for me. So you actually wanted to get into this, and this is our first collaboration. We'll think of the name later. We are thinking of the name, guys.
Yeah, so throw out suggestions in the comments, Dime Jumper fam, and people watching. We wanna. There's obviously I have my time machine videos, which are the timeline of or breaking down the film. But I'm also like the one I did with, if you guys remember my subscribers, the ones with Ocean's Wave when I talked about how Kobe lost the 2 finals in 04 and 08. And then you guys remember I was saying that I'm gonna come out with how Kobe went back to back. I'm going to do revisiting those series when I watched them on the timeline. We're going to have the time machine, but I'll also break it down with people that are willing to watch those series. And I know Fabian's willing to rewatch some of those series. So we want to discuss it as if it was happening in live time for all you guys. And so throw out some suggestions, the rewind, flashback. You guys throw out suggestions in the comments for what you want this segment to be called.
Definitely. And speaking of the Stay Mellow Knicks, it was, I think we wanted to start with, you asked me where did I want to start, and I'm like, as a Knicks fan, it's like even before the Isiah Thomas years. Like you can go into it with the Isiah Thomas years, but as a Knicks fan in the late 90s,
the 99 finals.
I want to start before that, Dom.
Okay, let's go. What you thinking?
The 96 offseason was a major offseason for us because we traded away Anthony Mason to the Hornets. We got back Larry Johnson, who had a bad back. They signed Allen Houston, and that wasn't even the $100 million contract yet. I think that was in 97 or 98 when they signed Allen Houston to a $100 million deal. That offseason was Pat Riley had gone to Miami. So he got Tim Hardaway, Alonzo Mourning. They got rid of I think Rashawn Leonard, and they got rid of I think Glenn Rice. No, not Glenn Rice. Forgot who it was that Miami got rid of.
You sure it wasn't Glenn Rice? Because Glenn Rice was on the 98 Hornets.
And they got rid of maybe. But that was a major deal. That was the first time when the GM, he had asked the Knicks owner at the time, was Dolan's father, for a piece of the Knicks. And they said no, for him to stay. And I was like, you're supposed to give Pat Riley anything he wants. Like, he created this team with Patrick Ewing. He coached us in the 90s. Then he goes on to Miami and immediately makes them a contender. Like, he basically he brought in Tim Hardaway on Alonzo Mourning to the Miami Heat because the Hornets were obviously dumping everyone if they got rid of LJ and Alonzo Mourning and got back Glenn Rice. And so that kind of like pissed us off because how the hell did Miami become relevant? Who 2 years, 3 years later, the Allen Houston game, he's the game winner against them. We kind of like, we got revenge on in a sense, but he still made them relevant. But those teams were kind of like, even that 99 run. We had LJ, we had Marcus Camby. LJ hit the famous 4-pointer, and then we got Sprewell that offseason and that was another thing. Oh my God. There was a rumor. I'm in 6th grade. There was a rumor that we could have traded John Starks in 93 for Latrell Sprewell. I couldn't believe it. I'm 10, 11 years old, knowing that that's a better trade. I don't know how I know this innately, but I do. So 6 years later, when the trade happens, I'm like, damn, this is 6 years late. What if Patrick Ewing would have had Latrell Sprewell in his prime? Don't worry about it. You could do that. You could do yoga and everything. We're just into.
No, just my back was hurting. But I mean, here's the thing. I hate to sound like I don't know, but I haven't gotten there yet. Like, I don't know how good Latrell Sprewell was with the Warriors in the early 90s. You know more about that than me. I'm still a rookie when it comes to the 90s. I know more than my peers, but that's not saying much. They don't do their research.
No, but you will, and that's the other amazing thing that people will pick up on. They'll learn. With Dime Dropper, he's 22 years old.
Just turned 23 a couple months ago.
Nobody is going back to the 1960s to look at every game and be able to argue the way that you will, and you're going to document everything. So
Yeah.
Latrell Sprewell in the 90s was basically a one-handed bandit. It's the guy you saw in 99. But imagine him being younger and growing in New York.
Yeah.
So when he came to the Knicks, we did not expect to get to that finals run.
Yeah.
Of
Of course. I mean, as the 8th seed, that never happened before.
right, and that was the first time, or was that when Denver beat Seattle? That
They
was
never
the
didn't
first
go to the finals though. Oh no,
right,
you're talking about the first time. The first time an 8 seed beat a 1 seed was Seattle, Denver in
right,
'94.
94. Wow, that's crazy. That was the year after Barkley went to they beat in the Western Conference Finals against
Yeah,
Barkley.
against Chuck. He always talks about that game 7 that was the best game of his life.
I remember watching that game. We'll get to that in a second or later on.
Yeah.
But that was the build-up to the 99 season, and we didn't have a chance to beat the Spurs. I knew we didn't have a chance, but Sprewell and Allen Hughes, especially Sprewell, gave us a jolt. And going into the 2000s, Sprewell, he unraveled. And everything that we saw with PJ Carlissimo, we heard about it, it came to be true. Then they traded Patrick Ewing to the Orlando Magic for, why am I forgetting this trade right now? Because it was for Glenn Rice. So no, it's to and then it was a 3-way trade. We gotta look that up because I did not look this up. How dare I?
Tell my subscribers, what were the Knicks like before Dolan as a fan?
In the
A lot of these
90s?
kids, they don't even know. I mean, my era has been Dolan.
In the 90s?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, when Dolan took over.
His father was I think it was Dave Checketts. They were great, bro. Like they had the city on smash.
Winning organization.
Yes. If anyone gets to watch the 1986 Mets documentary, it's a 30 for 30. That's what the Knicks felt like. Like there were so many 90s teams back then, even the Bulls, the Pacers, that copied the 80s blueprint of the Pistons. Big men that were just bullying you. The Knicks copied it and they took the Bulls to 7 games in 92, 93. Ewing, Oakley, Anthony Mason, John Starks, became household names in New York City. They were rough. Everyone knew it. They didn't care. It felt like what New York City felt like going outside. Like during the pandemic, I was a little worried because my daughter is a teenager now, and I have to prepare her for what started to feel like a 90s New York City environment. It started to feel a little bit crazy, and the Knicks had that blue collar mentality. Pat Riley, again, bringing him back up, the smooth Wall Street looking finagler out there on the sideline, running the sidelines. He just came from winning 4 titles with the Lakers. So
Yeah.
we had everything built in with them. It felt like a movie. You had the big center, most talented dude. My mother remembers when we drafted. We got the number 1 pick for Patrick Ewing. She said she was sitting in Shea Stadium during those 86 Met run.
Wow.
She was
Which
sitting.
30 is that? Doc and Daryl?
No, it's another one. It's the 86 Mets. It's after this book. I forgot the name of this author, but he wrote the book and they did the document, the 30 for 30 on it, based on it. And it's really good. They talk about Dykstra. They talk about the entire team, how Gary Carter was like the fake leader. He would just talk too much, but Keith Hernandez was really the backbone to that team. And Keith Hernandez my mother loves Keith Hernandez. I thought he only played for the Mets as a kid. And she's the one who told me, no, he used to play for St. Louis, and St. Louis used to kill us. He was a big Red Machine fan. So anyway, the Mets, the New York City was a Mets town in the 80s because of that, because they represented the wildness of the 80s, the cracked out era of New York City. Come to the 90s, the Knicks represented the blue collar Knicks, the blue collar New York City. So that was what made it exciting. It was an event to watch. I mean, you seen it the other night with the Knicks versus the Celtics. That was one game. The Knicks felt like that every other day in New York. Every time you went to school, we couldn't argue. Like we were in arguments just like what you see on Twitter right now. That was the Knicks. We had a team to fight for and root for in the 90s.
Who are you arguing against? Jordan fanboys?
You had Jordan fanboys for the most part because you didn't have anyone that was a Pacers fan in school. You really didn't. Whoever was a Reggie Miller fan probably got jumped. New York City, once again, was wild. You were respected if you were like Jordan was so great. He was a villain that people loved him. We wore his sneakers, so he was a cultural icon besides being a basketball icon. So you were allowed to root for him. Like you were like probably you were just probably just you were cool with it, and people were cool with you liking Jordan because it became the argument. Like we killed you. It was always part of the whole.
That's crazy because I know my uncle was around your age, hated it. He said it was annoying. Everybody's jumping on the Bulls bandwagon when he's a Laker fan and Magic's gone, and they're like, "Yeah, it's old news now. Showtime's done."
That's what happened in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
See, Jordan. But we had to play this guy 4 times a year,
which makes it to me. I feel like I'd be more annoyed if I was a Knicks fan.
It wasn't. It's just like, you know what it is. Like that's the thing about Twitter that kind of like when we're on Twitter and Twitter Spaces for the most part. You're not in person. Like you get to argue with somebody and laugh at them and then crack jokes. Like you don't understand what we went through when Patrick Ewing scored 1 point against the Indiana Pacers, 1 free throw point. The embarrassment you have to go through when you go to school. When Jordan came back, my boy Joe, shout out to my man Joe Rose. When Jordan came back with the Magic, and he got stripped by Nick Anderson, he always talks about the embarrassment of walking down the halls in school and people yelling at him because Michael Jordan came back and did that. Then the next year he was able to talk shit back because Jordan came back. It wasn't just on Twitter, you know what I mean? Like back then it was bragging rights. You had bragging rights, and it felt like people were on the bandwagon, and you knew exactly where they were. That's why all the stuff that's going on right now with Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, all those bandwagon dudes, I'm kind of like used to it now because I'm like, oh, these are the Jordan fans from back then. You guys will not be Warriors fans in 5 or 7 years when they suck. That's what happened to the Bulls.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's the part that annoys me because these guys, like when they leave, what are they gonna do? Pick a new fan, like pick a new guy. Like for me, you too. We just ride for our teams every single decade, every single year, and we live with the changes. You know, the players come and go, but we stay. And like I always rep my squad. The thing with my arguments at school was it was always LeBron versus Kobe from my childhood, and then Lakers. The Laker fans would clown me though because it's Clippers and Lakers. Like Laker fans, they don't really get clowned because there's too many of them. Like, you know what I mean? But that was just my experience. But yeah, I do miss that like kind of Twitter-ish kind of thing, but in person at school. And you know what though? What was cool about school is we would just talk like real basketball. Like we would talk on what we saw last night. The arguments now are like, oh, he's averaging more, his PER is better. Like that's not how we talked back in the day.
No.
His gravity. Look at some of these terms. We always talk about it. Some of the terms that I've been seeing, man, it sounds so like nerdy, like gravity, floor raiser.
That gravity, floor raiser, his ceiling. Now, somebody's ceiling was always
leverage. He's leveraging his pick and rolls.
Is that leveraging? I don't even know.
I don't know what that really means.
He's how okay. Like this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Like I can't, but we wouldn't be using that because again, it was like barbershop talk.
Yeah, exactly.
In the hallways, like in between classes, in the lunchroom, at gym, you know, in between like whatever. If you're trying to holler at girls, like it was in between all of these things. It was part of our culture, especially in New York. And jerseys just started being in style. Like you could wear a jersey to school as like a shirt. That's part of your attire. So it was different. I mean, it was still part of the, like I said, the culture. And with Twitter, it is also. That's why Twitter Spaces changed everything because it feels more like that. Like it feels like high school again. I'll be 40 this year, so to feel like I'm in high school again is weird. But when I say it out loud, but in the middle of it, it's like it's cool because it's to argue with people about ball, and it's like you challenge yourself too, and you get to see if you really know what you know. But I guess in the 2000s when we traded, going back to the Knicks, we traded Patrick Ewing. It was for Glenn Rice.
You guys had Glenn Rice?
Yes, we did.
Damn.
Ewing wanted out.
That was before the Lakers? Because 1999-2000, Glenn Rice is a champion here in Los Angeles, the Lakers.
It was okay. A 14, 12-player deal orchestrated by Knicks, orchestrated by the Knicks and Ewing's agent, David Falk.
David Falk really was like the Rich Paul that day, huh? He owned he was like
there's nothing new about the super agent. What Rich Paul is doing now is because, you know, David Falk was Michael Jordan's agent. So Rich Paul is LeBron James' agent.
Here's my thing. Would David Falk funnel players into Jordan's team though? That's the only difference to me.
they didn't have the leverage.
He has some
What
leverage
LeBron,
in the pick and rolls.
he could have pick and roll his way into getting these. But look, remember, he threatened. Jordan did threaten. That's why I hate when hear these conversations about how loyal Jordan was or Kobe was. Jordan did threaten the Bulls and say he's going to join Patrick Ewing in New York.
What year was that? Was that before he was winning rings?
No, that was when he came back. That was 97. I was in 98. When he was restructuring his deal. Those last 3 years, Jordan was making.
It was leverage for contract, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So do you think he was using it as a threat, just like Kobe with the Bulls?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was almost a done deal.
That was almost. He really was thing, but
right. But he
had
had
to use. Kupchak did his thing.
But Jordan had to. But you see, just by looking up this trade right now, you can see how him mentioning the Knicks, it's the Patrick Ewing connection, which also the David Falk connection, because Falk is Ewing's agent. He orchestrates this deal for a 12-player deal. It'll send future Hall of Fame center to the Supersonics. General manager Scott Layden. Wow, I hated his guts. The Knicks will receive the sharpshooting Los Angeles forward Glenn Rice. The Lakers backup center Travis Knight. The Phoenix Suns center Luke Longley. The Knicks got Luke Longley, Travis Knight, and Glenn Rice. I only remember Travis Knight being on our team. In addition, they will receive peripheral guards players Vernon Maxwell. I didn't realize he was still playing back then. Vladimir Stepania, I remember him. And a first round pick, second round picks in 2001 from Seattle, as well as the Lakers' first round pick in 2001. The Knicks also sent Chris Dudley, their backup center, and a first round pick to Phoenix in 2001. The Lakers received Horace Grant, Greg Foster, Emmanuel Davis, and Chuck Person from Seattle.
Wow.
That's how they got Horace Grant? Wow.
I didn't even know that. That's actually great stuff.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Wow. So
they traded Patrick Ewing to Seattle, and that was a horrible deal.
How'd you feel about that? Like, wasn't that like your childhood hero?
It felt like it's just the end of an era, and you were kind of like in denial about it.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. I mean, I'd assume you guys got really close with you. I mean, you went through all the ups and downs with that guy, and then to see him in another uniform, it just sounds like it sucks. Because yeah, it just kind of sounds like it just sounds like it sucks.
He got hurt. That finals run, he had gotten hurt. And even 2 years before the final, was that when he broke his wrist against the Milwaukee Bucks? He broke his wrist against the Milwaukee Bucks. He landed underneath the basket and he pushed away so he can land next to the padding behind the basket. I remember that vividly. I was in my Aunt Angela's house and I remember watching it oh damn. And it wasn't people were shitting on us, like I said about Patrick Ewing, but that's still our dude. Without him, he's the anchor. So by the time 2001 came around, I didn't fully understand everything. I didn't fully understand the business side of things. Glenn Rice being there, what were we really gonna do? That was 2001. So from between 01 and 06, when Isiah Thomas comes in there, I mean they were horrible. But I'm trying to remember. I know Allen Houston. I think it was that year he gave Kobe 50. He gave the Lakers.
I've seen highlights of that.
Yeah,
he got a nice shot.
That's the best form of all time. I don't know who has a better form. We were talking about that with JP earlier.
So wait, when you said Patrick Ewing, everybody gives him shit, is that Knicks fans or is that the opposing? Why? Because he didn't win a championship? And he missed that layup?
He missed the layup. He had 1 point. They felt like he wasn't clutch. Charles Oakley just came out and said he was soft. He was basically not much of a leader.
Yeah, I know. I heard that was crazy to hear that.
I think it's stupid.
Do you think? Yeah, go for it.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think if Pat had a bona fide second star that he would have won a championship? Or do you think he's still? Oh, really?
Hell yeah. We went to 7 games against
a star worse than him, though. I'm saying
a star worse. Who? I mean,
like a Glenn Rice or Latrell Sprewell in his prime or in his young years.
We would have beat the Rockets. We would have beat the Rockets. I hear Kenny Smith.
Well, the thing is, the Rockets didn't really I guess you can say Otis Thorpe, but that '94 team didn't really have a true second star that year either. It was pretty fair in terms of the matchup.
They were ahead of their time in terms of if you see how many 3-point. There's a video I actually copied from Ben Taylor, and it was like from 92 to 95 or 96, the Rockets were increasing the amount of 3-point field goals that they were taking. They had like 2 or 3 guards on the court, 3 guards on the court with Hakeem Olajuwon at the time because they knew he could kick it out. So they were amazing at that. So that's why I say with Sprewell, you have an athletic guard who's anchored by someone who can play defense. Patrick Ewing set the record for blocks in a championship against Hakeem Olajuwon. Like there are certain things people forget. He lost his athleticism
like in the single game or in the whole series.
in the series for a
Wow.
championship.
Well, I guarantee, just a footnote, even though that's extremely impressive, that Wilt and Bill Russell, if blocks were calculated, definitely have the record for a finals. There's no doubt. But still, that's impressive. I didn't even know that.
But for it's
especially against Hakeem.
The fact that we don't have a statue of him is insane.
There's no statues though. There are no statues, aren't
there?
There
should be. There should be.
Creed and Clyde Frazier don't have any.
They should have statues as well. It's Clyde Frazier.
I know, but like the thing is, MSG is like by Penn Station. Like, do you know an ideal spot out there?
I mean, when you're walking in the stadium, like
yeah, you can figure it out.
Like it's what I'm saying is it's more slander towards somebody like that. That slander should be over with. It's not like with Melo, which we're gonna do in a second. Yeah. It's not like with Melo where
I just don't think Melo's the
finals.
Yeah,
he went to a finals. Went to several conference finals.
Yeah, I know the Melo. We're going to talk about it right now, but I just don't think he was ever the best player on a championship team ever.
No, and I don't know if Patrick Ewing was going to be, even with Sprewell there. But that's the difference. Like they treat Ewing so badly about like even with David Robinson. What did David Robinson do before Tim Duncan was there?
That's what I'm saying. He's in the same boat. All these guys are that played in.
No, he's not. Again, Hakeem Olajuwon did not do to Patrick Ewing what he did to David Robinson. The same playoffs. The same playoffs. I think that was the year that
next year.
That was the following season?
Yeah, following season.
All right. Well, it was embarrassing what he did to David. He didn't respect David Robinson whatsoever. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't kill Patrick Ewing. Of course he did. But he's not looked at the same way. He's not. That's part of the reason why and don't get me wrong, at the time I probably was shitting on Patrick Ewing for coming up short. Up until too many Knicks fans started like, even after the trade, like, yo, you didn't feel like something come to an end? I'm gonna argue with my boy about that. Like, he would rather have David Robinson. I'm like, are you sure about that? Like, what if Patrick Ewing had Tim Duncan to end off his career? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he could have easily, if he had him in 99, instead of Duncan being on the Spurs in 1999 and he was on the Knicks, they win.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what are we talking about right now? So it was unfair, and it came to, it was definitely, it felt like an ending, especially when you see him on the Supersonics. It just felt like that's what it used to be. Now that I think about it, we're so used to Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, all the superstars of the last 10 years, Kawhi Leonard. All the superstars are going to different teams in their prime. The only time that happened with the superstars back in the day was when they were old. Charles Barkley, towards the end of his career.
Oh, man. I've seen people on Twitter talk about Charles Barkley has no right to criticize super teams because he went. It was like, and he always says the same thing. He's like, we were 105 years old back then. Like, he was like, like, he says the same. And I feel him on that. Like, I need to see the timeline, but I can assume that he's telling the truth. And that's what people say. Although I do know that in 1997, they had a really good chance. And then Stockton did him dirty in the end.
Was that the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, I believe so.
He hit the game winner.
I'm excited for that series. Yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah,
that's a series winner. That ended the series.
I know. Yeah, that's crazy. That's so clutch. People don't talk about that enough with Stockton. He's another player that gets a ton of disrespect on Twitter. He's white, but you saw him, so
he was just. I didn't even understand. It's like you said. It's like you're saying with him. He was so, maybe like with Patrick Ewing also. He's overlooked. He's taken for granted.
That's a good one. What if John Stockton was your second best player? You think you're gonna beat the Bulls?
If he was on the Knicks instead of whoever?
Instead of like Derek Harper.
90.
I need to look at you guys' rosters. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta look at you guys' roster. It's tough. The Bulls are really good.
When you watch the game, you're gonna see like why the Bulls, like Jordan is Jordan. You know what I mean?
I'm
like,
excited.
Yeah, to go to 7 games.
That's crazy. You guys really took them to 7 games, though.
Yeah, because they were built like the Pistons, but the Pistons did not have a center like Patrick Ewing. So
They probably had still more like firepower all the way around though.
who the Pistons?
Yeah, with like the microwave coming off the bench and like Mark Aguirre and Dumars and Isiah Thomas, the three of them are like that's just like
Again, you had damn near like three guards on the court at the same time, like Mark Aguirre and like Adrian Dantley. They traded him for I think
for Mark Aguirre. That was what it was. I'm pretty sure
Mark Aguirre.
yeah.
So they needed to move that fast on defense because they couldn't like defend their front court was big and they were just knocking you down. As not Isaiah McDaniel, who was the other on the fourth?
Lambier and
Mahorn. But look, they had Rodman.
Yeah,
Rodman was really a perimeter. There's a Draymond Green episode right now where he's interviewing Ron Artest, and they're talking about who the best defensive players are of all time. And then Ron Artest goes, I just recently watched tape like Dennis Rodman, like he was guarding Jordan and Pippen, in the 80s. That's crazy. And the way he says it, like, yeah, Ron, what the hell? Where the hell were you at? And he doesn't get enough props. But for a perimeter defense wise, I think me and you talked about the other day. Rodman and Joe Dumars on your defense on the perimeter is insane. And they had to do that because who the hell is like Isaiah's good, but he's but so much you can do as a little guy.
Yeah, no, Joe Dumars is another one I was talking about that should have definitely been considered for top 75 as a Finals MVP, one of the best backcourts of all time, back-to-back rings. You say the way you're talking him up on defense, I knew he was a good offensive player, but that's high praise. Like, I don't know. Damian Lillard made it. Like, I know he may have more talent, but Joe Dumars, like he's part of iconic teams.
There's no way. I think they were saying that Kyrie was supposed to make it, but there's no way Damian Lillard is top 75 over Dwight Howard, over Joe Dumars, over Kyrie.
Alex English, another one. He led the whole decade in points. He didn't even make it.
I didn't realize. I thought it was Kiki Vandeweghe, but it was Alex English that did.
Alex English, but Kiki was on those teams, and
Right.
Melo made the top 75 over him. But
over who?
Over Alex English. But anyway, I gotta watch his film.